Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive and taking the Maryland Crab Cake Tour out on the road. I have Raven scratch-offs to give away. We are this week going to be at Fadley's on Wednesday and setting up for the holiday on the 17th. We'll be at Amici's of Little Italy. Doesn't matter. They don't have a crab cake there. I'm going there anyway because they have a Ponte Rotundo. Maybe get Nancy to come over and make us some crab cakes or whatnot, but lots of great guests. And then on Wednesday, we'll be at Costas wrapping things up on the 18th before the Ravens get ready to play the Steelers. And then they get ready to play the Texans. And we got to figure out whether they're going to have that kind of pathway to a Super Bowl and a championship that once led us to Raymond James Stadium, January 28, 2001, in Tampa, Florida, where this guy lives. He is a Baltimorean, much like us. He has made a life writing about sports down in the other Bay Area, the Tampa Bay area. He has written a book called Last Man Standing about Tom Maddie, and reached me a couple years ago as a writer down in the Tampa area. I'm going to let him tell his story in ways you can buy the book and all that. But Joel, I tell you, as I get older, and I haven't admitted this to many people. I was going to admit it to Brandon Stokely, but I didn't want to make him feel good about himself. That this whole Colts thing that I grew up with has come back to me in a different way. Don McCafferty is the manager over at the Beaumont, the
Right,
grandson of the
right.
Super Bowl V winning coach here. And I have this Baltimore Colts belt buckle that I have an arm's reach away, and I'll grab it. I think I showed it to you last time.
Yeah,
And I've gotten into this thing, and you have the banner over your thing there that was from the 70s. I've gotten into this thing where I've looked at on eBay when I'm buying my belt buckles and doing all the weird stuff that I do with Houston Oilers stuff, that I like started perving old Colt stuff and the old football cards and the old players and the signed stuff by Art Donovan and Jim Parker and that era. And nothing, it just says Colts. Nothing that's just the helmet and the horseshoe. It has to have Baltimore or the old Colt logo on it or something that touches Johnny Unitas in some way. But I've gotten really weirded out about it with Stedman and finding the Stedman book a couple of months ago. So it's been a while since I've had you on, but welcome
yeah,
back. And I want you to sell your book and tell the stories because these are stories that if you're not telling them and I'm not telling them and Joe
right.
Unitas just came on a couple of weeks ago, if we're not telling them, these kids today, they don't understand what we went through, Joel, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first off, thanks again for having me on this. Happy holidays to you. Sorry I'm not up there for the crab cake tour.
Well, dude, you can order your crab cakes
I
online from any
know.
of our sponsors, you know?
And,
If you want Costas, you get them. You want Coco,
uh,
get them all. Get Fadley's, order them from everybody for crying out loud.
I
They're
got you.
delicious.
I tell you what, as we get older, I think we get more reflective about things we grew up with. And in my journey with all these book signings, I've gotten that. A lot of people, even people, if they don't buy the book, they come up to me, they tell me, oh, I knew Tom. I went to his church. I worked with him, and he left an indelible impression on a lot of the people, like you and I, and as all those old guys did.
And he
And
and those guys, and when I see Stan White, eh, they make me want to go get that ticket stub from 1973 that I don't
yeah,
have anymore, even though I have the program for my dad's first game when he
yeah,
separated Joe Namath's shoulder. And just,
yeah,
I was so thrilled to be associated with anytime Burt Jones would walk in a room, I freak out like a little puppy. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Because my dad took those are my guys. Roger Carr, Joe Ehrman, the Sack Pack,
yeah,
Dutton, like that 70s team was my first team. And then it just all went away
yeah,
forever, right? Like in a weird way. And I think that made it that much more impactful that Tom
right.
Maddie and Johnny Unitas and Lenny Moore got involved with the Ravens when they came here, right? They got sort of rescued in that way.
Yeah, you're talking about the second generation, with Bert and the Sack Pack. And it was for me too, really. I mean, I know I'm about 10 years older than you, but like I think I told you last time, I didn't get to my first game until Unitas's last game, 70.
Wow.
Yeah, I was 15,
72?
72 against OJ.
That was the Buffalo game. Okay.
Right, he throws that wobbly pass to Hinton. Somehow Eddie comes down with it, goes 60 some yards. The plane flies overhead. Unitas we stand.
52 years ago, and you remember like it was
That
yesterday.
was well, it was my first game, brother. Yeah,
Like the Linhard Fog game for me. I was
but it's
7 years
funny because
old. Like
knowing I
I
was
remember it.
coming
I
on
was
with
sitting
you,
there.
yeah, knowing I was coming on with you, I started thinking I was also at that last playoff game, the Christmas Day double overtime loss to Oakland that we should have won,
It
but
was
Mark,
Christmas Eve, and my
yeah,
mom had a
yeah,
ham in the oven that was overcooked. My dad was in a bad mood. The buses stopped running. My uncle had to come up and pick
yeah,
us up at the corner of Highland Avenue because the
yeah.
23 bus stopped running because it was 5, 6 o'clock. It was dark. It was 7 o'clock. Like
Uh,
on Christmas Eve, we couldn't get home, and they lost in double overtime. Goes to
I
the
mean,
post.
rest in peace, but Marchibroda sat on that lead, and he kept getting in a field position battle with Ray Guy, punting and pushing him farther back, and then
Hey,
eventually,
diddle diddle, David
and it
Lee. Yeah.
right, and it goes into double overtime, then goes to the post. I mean, yeah, you remember all that stuff,
When you're
but
running to Bruce Laird, you don't bring that up with him, So don't put it.
no, no, because he'll go off for about 10. But that was the last good team they had, Ness. I mean, Bert got hurt in 78. And then what through 83, they were pretty much terrible. I think Ernie, of course, he's last year's GM. He put together a decent team. They were 7-9, had a couple of near misses, and then they leave town. And your heart's broken. But yeah, I mean, I tried to bring that out in the book. And
What is your book about with
here's the
Tom,
book.
and what inspired? By the way, Joel Poiley is our guest. The
There you
book is Last Man Standing. Give everybody your Baltimore background
go.
that
Okay.
led you to the book and what the book is about. Because
Uh,
Tom, I mean, everybody met Tom Maddie. Everybody knew Tom Maddie.
Yeah, I mean, I said this the last time we were on, but it's been a few months. I mean, I grew up there. Um, I was there until like November of '86. So at the time I left, I was working in Carroll County, but yeah, I went to Milford Mill High School. I went to UMBC. So I left, and I was
You left, and the
almost
Colts had just left.
2 years prior. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
but I
because
mean, it was fresh. It was, yeah.
well, it was weird because I got the job in Carroll County in I think I started working there in August of '84, and they had left in March. So that would have been my chance to maybe cover them a little bit. Now, they had long since moved away from Western Maryland College,
They were
but
Goucher, yeah.
yeah, but I was covering, Western Maryland. When I'd go up there for football games, my mind would just go back to when I was a little kid sitting up there on the hill waiting for practice, and everybody's walking off the field, and
I
I'm
never
getting,
went to Colts practice. My dad didn't drive, you know what I mean?
uh,
So like it
yeah,
wasn't on the bus line. It wasn't something I even thought of doing or knew any kid in my neighborhood that had ever done. I had never met anybody that ever went to Colts. Now, Colts
you were a lot
games,
younger.
way different, dude. Like my dad, every ticket stub means something from 73, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Yeah,
9. And then my dad got pissed in 80, 81 when the baseball strike happened, 82, the football. Like
yeah.
during that period of time, I went to a St. Louis Cardinals game to see Jim Hart play. And
Mm-hmm.
my dad refused to go. And I went on
Right.
my own on the bus at 14 years old because I was going out to games all the time. So that's where I saw Chris Collinsworth play in the first ever Bengals where they didn't have Bengals on the side. They wore the sort of the Zubaz kind of jungle look that they're
Oh
familiar
yeah,
with
yeah,
now, where they changed their helmets.
yeah.
80, 81, 82, Schleister, Pagel, like all of that
Mark Herman.
is. Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah,
David Hum, right?
yeah,
So I mean, the Chargers game when they got beaten by Dan Fouts, the Steelers game, the last eight, the Earl Campbell game at the end of 80, like I remember all of that. But
yeah,
Tom Maddie, little before me, like I was 73. Bad Marty Domrez. My dad was so pissed at
yeah.
the Colts for getting rid of Johnny Unitas that he bought me a Chargers a pennant for
Yeah.
my wall, and I bought an Oilers pennant that day. And I've told Dan Pastorini this and Billy White Shoes Johnson right
Mm-hmm.
down the line. I became an Oilers aficionado because I love the colors. But the
Right.
Colts, I had Colts night robes and pajamas and hats, and like I have all sorts of childhood pictures of me with Colts stuff because my dad took me to Colts games. Not they only played They played 7 regular and 3 preseason and then 2. But
Right.
I went to preseason games against the Bears, against the Falcons, against the Vikings. I saw my ticket stuff from I saw Chuck Foreman run the ball. I saw
Yeah.
Fran Tarkenton. So all of that as a kid, and it was just gone. And
Yeah.
I'm just getting to the point where I can understand what it was like to be Tom Maddie, to bridge that generation, to be a part of the '01 team that I talked about with Tampa,
Yeah.
because like those are complex men, right? I mean, all of those people who hung out. Bruce, I talk about Bruce Laird. I would see
Right.
Howard Stevens here. Just
Oh
not to
yeah.
mention being Johnny U or being a Hall of Famer as well. You know.
Yeah. And uh, it was so different back then too. I mean, I've had this discussion with a lot of people that they lived in the communities next to you. They work. Imagine in the off season, you go to work at Beth Steel, punch in at 8 a.m., and who's working next to you on the assembly line? Unitas. And then you clock out at 5 and you go have a Schlitz down at the local tavern. I mean, those guys became your friends. They weren't just people you looked up to. And my affiliation with Tom, and I tried to bring this out in the introduction in the book, and a lot of people have told me they like that because it's the backstory of how I got to know him. And I was 8 in '65, and the book starts with that famous Green Bay playoff game. But there was just something about him, his demeanor. Yeah, I got his autograph a couple times at Western Maryland, but it was the way he carried himself. He was always on, and I've told you this, he was always on corralling the Colts. He always had a laugh and a smile. He would talk to anybody, but beyond that, he was a heck of a player. And I think a lot of people tend to forget that. Well, in Baltimore, they don't. But what I've gotten with people that have read the book that didn't know the Baltimore scene that well, that said, damn, I mean, this guy was like a marginal Hall of Famer for all the things he did. His numbers, as we know, will never get him in Canton, but he was a heck of a player. But what I also loved about him was how he and Judy Maddie adopted Baltimore as their hometown. And when the Colts left, he did everything he could to bridge that gap for those 12 years when there was no football, whether it was a USFL team, then he had part ownership with the Canadian team. He was good friends with Modell, and he wasn't one of the high level movers and shakers in the government, but he talked to Art and said, "Look, we have a stadium deal in place because that was in place when they didn't get a team during the expansion process when it went to Jackson, Charlotte." And he became Baltimore, and then for the first 10 years, as he was the radio analyst. So he was a special person. He really was, and it was an honor to get to know him. And as I've gotten into this, like when I was in Baltimore in August doing the signings, Judy Maddie came to a couple, and I now call her like my surrogate mother. I mean, we have these conversations. We talk a couple times a month. She's a beautiful lady. She really is. And, I've gotten to know the family a little bit. And it's just been a great process. It really has. I mean, as far as the book, real quick, according to my editor, they're happy. It's done pretty well for a first time book.
Yeah,
One other thing I just remembered, my best signing down here, I had 4 in Baltimore, but I have one more here this Sunday.
in
But
Tampa. You're in Tampa area, right?
right, but I've had 8 down here all over the state. I have one in Sunday in over in West Palm. But the best one I had down here was at a watch party in Clearwater the night before the Ravens played the Bucks Monday night, and it was a combination of all the Ravens flocks that are here and all these people from Baltimore that came down for the game. I sold more books that night than any other signing that I've had down here. And it was just great. People coming up to you, talking, remembering the old times. I mean, you would really enjoy it.
Well, Joel Poiley is our guest here. We did speak exclusively almost about the book and about his background in Baltimore, Milford Mill, and going down to Tampa and being a grizzled sports writer. Everything I ever wanted to do in life, Joel, was
My
to
man.
like leave the sun and have the Tampa Bay Times or the
Tampa Tribune.
Clearwater. Yeah, yeah. All I wanted to do was be a sports writer. You know that. My documentary came out last year, and it speaks to
Yeah.
John Stedman and really a lot of this cult history that sort of
Yeah.
comes your way that I don't want to get too misty-eyed. I did a 25th anniversary for the
Yeah.
Ravens Roost the other night in
Hmm.
Kearney here, and remembered the times, telling old Goose stories. And now that we've lost Goose, I mean, there's
Yeah.
a whole other thing that's happened here as I hold up Raven scratch-offs
Sure.
here in Baltimore, and we're 30 years into that. And not just to mention the journalism background. I did an hour last week with Mark Hyman from down at the University of Maryland. It was
Oh
my
yeah.
colleague at the News American, and then at the Sun. I did good 2 hours about 1984 journalism here with Sports First and Hearst and the Sun
Oh
and
yeah.
just all of that. But the Colts story and the football story of Baltimore. And, Dan Roderick's did the show this week. He's doing his show,
I saw it.
Baltimore, which is an unbelievable. If you get the chance to stream it, even watch it, it's one of the best things I've ever seen. Like, and I
Hmm.
tell Dan that, and Dan's like, "You're just sucking up to me," and I'm like, "Dan, like, I brought my whole family last year to the BMA to see it, but
Yeah.
he's next show he's writing is about 1966 in Baltimore and race and politics and the Orioles and how sports." And the city and culture are inextricable, right? Like they
Yeah.
are, and you have left it. You're 40 years gone from here,
Oh
and they're still over your shoulder. That's not wallpaper. I'm assuming that's your real office with
yeah.
all this. You don't just put stage up your Oriole stuff and
No,
your
it's
Memorial
no
Stadium
stuff.
stuff.
And I told
That
you those chairs are from Memorial. Yeah.
for me, it's rock and roll belt buckles, and it's old concert tickets, and it's Orioles and Blast and Skipjacks and Clippers and
Yeah.
Houston Oilers. All the stuff I loved when I was 10 years old. Like, and maybe I need to be on a shrink a chair,
No, you
but
don't.
I don't know. There's something about seeing that Baltimore Colts pennant over your shoulder that for
Yeah.
about 30 years it hurt me, it bothered me, it angered me. My wife thought I needed a shrink every time she would land in Indianapolis to me and say, "Boy, this really bothers you, dude." And I'm like, and I dropped that sword, 15 years ago at the
Yeah.
Super Bowl there for
Yeah.
my own mental health. And now I'm at a point where it's even reversed, where like anything, if somebody put a Tom Maddie 1971 football card in front of me and said, "Here, it's a gift for you. It's worth $1.50," right?
Right.
Like if they gave it to me, I'd want to put it in my little man cave and put it on the wall. It wouldn't need to be autographed. It wouldn't need to be mint condition. But like there's something very treasured about all of that. I had the Capitol Center guy on. I know I'm
Hmm.
ringing your bell now. There's a big book on the Capitol Center. One of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. It's $50. And
Yeah.
like I can't stop fingering through it, looking at the Led Zeppelin ticket stubs and reading the stories because it impacted me in a
Oh
way
yeah.
that the Colts impacted you to want to write the story of a man you knew who you thought his story needs to be told and be eternal.
Yeah. And just so everyone knows, I mean, Nestor contacted me about coming on. I think it was like the day or the day after that Lenny Moore celebrated his 91st birthday. And I think that got us all thinking. You think back to that era and you want to know how all those guys are doing. But yeah, I mean, it's really been an interesting experience the past couple months with all these signings and the people that come up to you and just getting to know the Maddie family. I mean, great people. They really are. And those memories don't leave you. But like I said, as you get older, they become more treasured and they're a part of your youth. And that team, and these are the last three chapters of the book, but that team had a special influence on the town. I mean, we know that it put Baltimore on the map. But then our heart was torn out, when Ursay leaves town and where Ursay pulls the team out of town. But we never forgot those guys because a lot of them still lived in the community, like you said. And Tom's
Maddie was
story,
especially like
Tom's
because
story runs all the way through about
yeah,
2018 until he just
he
was
didn't
off the
play in
air.
58 and 59, but he watched it in college in
Oh yeah,
Ohio. He winds up playing next to and with the great Johnny Unitas for a
yeah,
lifetime. I mean, those disappointments in the mid 60s when they were 13-1 and couldn't win,
yeah,
and goalpost field goals. I
yeah,
saw the Tunney ticket stub. I had to Google that to make sure it was the right game in Green Bay. It was
yeah,
65, whatever. So, like, then the Super Bowl disappointment, the
Oh yeah.
merger, finally winning and being kind of done and washed up, and immoral and
Right.
Unitas, all of them, sort of the end of the end of the end. And
Yeah.
then to
Joe.
see the franchise ripped away before you're 40 years old, right?
Yeah.
And then to live in the community and say, I'm not going to live here. My church is here. My people are here. My
Yeah.
star is here. My history, my legacy is here. And
Yeah.
then, and to your point, it is I mean, if nothing else, I hope I've told that story as best I could on the back end of Charlie Ekman
Oh
and,
yeah.
on the radio here to
Oh yeah.
try to bridge the gap. And I don't think it means anything to these kids that are drunk on the bar stool thing and being jerks and not in the gambling thing. And
Yeah.
this was about not just civic spirit, civic pride, but civic enrichment and lifting the city, not sucking from the city financially and using fans as an ATM as I hold my wallet up on the air.
Yeah.
Like this was something that these men primarily and their
Yeah.
wives and families gave
Yeah.
back. And that goes for Brooks, that goes for Boog, that goes for Frank, that goes for my last name's Aparicio. And I tried to convince Mr. Rubenstein that
I know.
like it is important. The Orioles are how important are the Orioles to me? There's no me if there's no Orioles,
I know.
right? If there's
I,
no Louis Aparicio, there's no me. So I've come to grips with that at 56. And every Tom Maddie and Johnny Unitas
right.
legacy and the people that tell these stories and hold it together. To your point, every time you sign a book, people come together and
Yeah.
they want to, the way I did with Ravens Roost the other night, they want to relive that period in their life, whether it's a Led Zeppelin concert ticket, wherever you were. Those things matter as we get older because we don't necessarily experience them again. And
Right.
we appreciate them when they are authentic, the way Tom Maddie was.
Well, Rick Volk had a good quote in the book. We were talking about how the Ravens have treated some of the old guys and pretty well. And Judy's told me, that the Ravens have been very positive, and when Tom died, they were there for her. I mean, I know you've had your issues with the Ravens, but they've been good to her. And but
Dude, everything was fine with the Ravens with me until it wasn't. So,
I got it.
I've
And
written my story,
I know we don't have that much time, but I did want to get into something with you and what's going on up there. But
Write down. Sure. We'll do it.
but what Volk told me was, these kids coming out of high school and college now, they don't know anything about the legacy. And as a lot of these older guys pass on, you're kind of concerned that what's going to happen. But I think there's still enough of us still around, even if we don't live there anymore, that can relate that.
I
Uh,
think if I sat with Lamar Jackson and asked him, I don't know what he knows and what he doesn't know, or what
he should,
any,
man.
and what John Harbaugh even really knows or doesn't know, or what he needs to still learn,
Well,
and Eric DeCon, for all of them, what Sashi Brown would know about a 56-year-old guy who
right.
spent 30 years with the Ravens, but had his team taken away and really saw Burt Jones play and really saw Lydell Mitchell run the ball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, and I'm only 56. I mean, I don't feel like I'm that old. I feel
No.
like everybody between me and Tom Maddie's age and Judy Maddie's age has
Right.
it's like what the Orioles are doing right now. And I told Rubenstein, like, we've all really lived through this. If you didn't live through it, you just come in with money and you're
Right.
a part of it. We lived it here. And it
Right.
does matter. It matters to how and why you walk by Johnny Unitas's and Ray Lewis's statue when
Yeah.
you walk into the stadium and say, who are these people? There's a rich legacy, good and bad here.
Tom was the godfather for all of Unitas's kids. That's how close we were. But getting back to, I saw the show with Rodriguez, and he was talking about 66, and that jogged a memory too. There's a video out there on YouTube called Spirit of 66 with John Kennelly and Chuck Thompson recapping the 66 season. You got to pull it up. And,
Is it like a
those are,
Disneyland piece?
no, it was basically just a recap of the season. And then it was before the end of the regular season, and then Kennelly does a recap of the 4 game sweep
Totally
against
going to
the.
do this. Go ahead. Keep going. Everybody's
Yeah,
going to
man,
do
it was
this.
just, it's like why I look this stuff up. I don't know. I mean, I kind of get into these old videos,
When
and
I
I
get in
did
a
a,
bad mood, I just put the Earl Weaver thing up and I laugh. It always makes me
and a
laugh.
lot of
So,
it too is, when you're researching the book, you're just going from video to video, but it's just the attachment that those guys had to the people there. But I'm going to go off the rails a little bit here. I know you've been trying to get to know Rubenstein and Katie Griggs and all. I'm going to say this, and it may not be very popular, but you love those teams. You grew up with those teams. They're a part of your heart. It's not just that they took your media pass away. You should be like in their media relations department because you know ways to promote that team that they don't. Plus the fact that you have a huge following. I mean, yeah, it bothered me when I saw 10,000 empty seats for game two, in the playoff series. My theory's a little simpler. I think the fans up there quit on the team after they lost game one. I really do. Because I think they just stopped hitting in total. And it's like, we're not going to beat any team 2 games in a row. If they had won that first game, I think more people would have showed up.
well, then
But
we don't have very good fans. If you're
right,
not, you know
right,
what I mean?
right. And
When
that's
tickets are
simply
$12 and you
that.
don't want to go out there and they're
Yeah,
playing for their season, you haven't done anything to earn the fans. That's
I
what I
agree.
would say. I would say we have bad fans. I would say the fans have shown you where they are,
Yeah,
period. As to whether it's a 4 o'clock game and kids can get off school, or I didn't
yeah,
have enough time, or I had another plan.
right.
Hey, something
It,
else was more important, and that's your job to make it as important as it is to me.
right.
And I have nowhere to run or hide from radio or you or anywhere. I'm not running at them with any aggressive anything other than
Right.
saying, you're not from around here. And when I pull Katie Griggs up on LinkedIn and see we
Yeah.
have 3 mutual friends, and I have 20,000 people here in the community that I'm
Yeah.
professionally linked to, let alone Facebook and all these other weird and people who listen who don't even think about social media or on their
Sure.
phones all day. I I wonder when those seats get filled, where those 10,000 people were. They were listening to the game, watching it in frustration, in warmth, in their man cave, whatever.
Yeah.
What's going to move them next year to fill those seats at $1.25? And the thing that happened, Joel, it was amazing during the baseball thing. And by the way, Joel Poiley is my guest. His book is on Tom Maddie. Please go buy it. Your background, longtime Tampa sports writer, I would say about you. Give the elevator speech for how you got to writing a book.
Um, well, the book was just, following Tom, but I've had several near misses. I mean, I had a contract for a book with Joe Madden when he was down here. It's always been a lifelong goal. The elevator speech with Tom was I saw that message he sent out to Kendall Hinton during COVID in 2020 when Kendall had to play quarterback when the first 3 QBs in front of him at Denver came down with
That's right.
COVID.
Right.
And
Okay.
Tom, with help from somebody, sent out a very heartfelt letter, which is actually the epilogue, the end of the book, because it was just a perfect, beautiful ending for the book. And I'm seeing that and I'm saying, surely somebody's written a book about Tom. I mean, he's always in the media up there, everybody knows him. But yeah, I did my research. He had written that book with the late, great Jeff Seidel about the Ravens, but it wasn't really about Tom and his life. But other than that, and I got a hold of Tom, about 4 or 5 months before he passed, but, he was still very with it. And he said, no, I mean, people talk to me all the time, and I'm still quoted, about the 65 game, but nobody's ever written a book about me. I'd be honored to do it. So that's how it came about. And I never forgot Tom all those years I was going. I mean, you can tell, I think people up there can tell, I still follow what's going on up there.
Now you
And
covered baseball in Tampa. What did you cover down there?
everything. I mean, the Bucks. I mean, I was never the beat writer, but sidebars. I was an editor, so I edited a lot of the copy on game day. Uh, when the Rays first got here, I was like the first reporter to interview the late great Chuck Lamar when he was the GM putting the team together. So I go way back. Covered tons of spring training. I mean, that was always what we looked forward to down here as reporters until we got a team. Um, but yeah, I covered everything.
You were there
I'm even
15, 20, 15, 10 years for the Rays got there almost, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because I got here in '86. I mean, I'm even surprised now that lacrosse has become a big thing in
Well, the
Florida.
Lightning, I tell people the Lightning own Tampa, the Bolts.
Oh, but see what's critical about that is Ness, great ownership. I mean, what the Vinnick Group and his guys have done, they treat the fans with respect. They're all over the community. They don't miss a marketing opportunity. I mean, I know Bisciotti's done a lot in the community up there, and we're kind of waiting to see what Rubenstein does. But yeah, who would have thought Tampa, Florida? I mean, we've sold out every game, I think, since 2015 at Amalie. Well, now it's Amalie Arena, but yeah, this is a hockey town for sure. Yeah, I've covered a little bit of
But
hockey
yeah, I
too.
mean, I tell anybody like if you go to Tampa, hockey kind of owns Tampa, and they're like, what? And
More than the
and
Bucks.
now, I mean, what a situation down there. I mean, you guys are playing baseball in a minor league facility right next to the. I mean, like the whole circumstance of the roof blowing off down
Yeah.
there. And my mother-in-law lives down in Sarasota, and
Oh
I
yeah.
talked to Rick Vaughn, on the frequent, and I have friends that live in St. Pete Beach, and
Yeah.
the devastation, the mess, and um, you know, baseball's in peril there. I would say, right? Or am I wrong in saying that?
I think so. I mean, first off, I'm glad that they're going to be playing in Tampa this year because I'll go to more games. So I don't have to go across the Howard Franklin Bridge because it's like another hour away. But I printed this out because this happened last week. The St. Petersburg Council voted last Thursday in favor of purchasing bonds that would fund a portion of the new stadium. But and the council voted 4-3 to move forward with a more than 300 million bond purchase to pay for the stadium. But the Pinellas County Commission must also approve the bonds to pay for their portion of the deal. In other words, the Rays are still holding out here. I mean, this was a natural disaster that all this extra money has to be spent, to fix up the Trop for 2 years, and then they want to be in a new stadium by what 28, and that is in peril now. I mean, Vaughn and those guys can tell you this area loves baseball. I've always just thought it was in the stadium was in the wrong place. I mean, it should have been on the Tampa side. You would have drawn better. You could have gotten more businesses. You could have
It's
drawn
drawn
a
from
little,
Orlando as well.
yeah, Orlando, Lakeland. You'd still bring people up from Bradenton, Sarasota. You know all that. It'll be interesting this year. I mean, as most people know, they're playing in Legends Field, it's the best possible scenario of a worse situation. But to think that they're sharing,
Montreal and San Juan must have been unavailable, I guess.
but the thing is, I mean, it's the Yankees facility, a hated division rival. But the Yankees, I think, are getting like 15 million out of this
Dude, the
deal.
Blue
Or
Jays played in Buffalo.
yeah,
I mean, the A's will
great.
play in wherever, Sacramento. Like,
Yeah,
it, it, it boggles my mind, dude. And it harkens me back to when Coward wrote the book and tried to convince me playing baseball in Camden Yards with the SWAT team circling the building and tanks out
yeah,
my view was a better idea than like playing that game in Bowie or Wilmington or
right.
wherever. But nonetheless, Joe Poiley's here. He is an author who is based down in the Tampa, Florida area and has been for 4 decades. But he is Balmer through and through.
I know.
He still says him the right way, the way I Dan
Water and
Rogers and
not
I said it last week.
water, and
Wooder, yeah, get Wooder and all that. The book is
yeah.
about Tom Maddie. I would hope everyone would go out and take a look at it. It is Last Man Standing. It is Joel Poiley, Poiley. Yeah, speak to that cover there. You got some old pictures there. Look at you.
It was really cool because the publisher and my editor let me design it. These two pictures are famous pictures. I mean, that's the one from the Green
Wristband.
Bay game with the original wristband, and this is the game from the NFL championship game against Cleveland where Tom scored 3 TDs, and that shot was on the front of Sports Illustrated the next week. And the publisher had to pay some good coin to do it, but they believed in me enough. And then we have Jack Nicklaus, his old college roommate from Ohio State, who wrote the foreword. And yeah, I was really happy with how it turned out.
Well, get the book, check it out. Joel and I are like back to baseball and money and Rubenstein and me being a cheerleader for the team or not being a cheerleader for the team in regard to journalism and dude, we're just at a different point where this
Yeah.
guy bought the team. He's in all the commercials, but he's not in all the press conferences.
Uh,
And I went out to Bethesda last month, night before the election, met
right.
him. I talked to him about the trauma and the 10,000 empty seats. At some point, the reality is the reality of whatever the economic reality of this is.
Yeah.
And the thing that disappointed me, the first, a couple things disappointed me. First, he doesn't know anything about baseball. So, like, literally doesn't know anything about baseball. Like, and would be afraid of coming on because I could not. I would have to agree to not talk about baseball because I
I
just
know.
don't. And in the same way, when I'm in a cocktail conversation, if somebody doesn't know anything about rock and roll, I don't talk to them about rock and roll. I talk about something else. But there is a point where
Right.
he's a billionaire who bought this thing, who put himself in front of it, that there's been no transference of acknowledgement of
Right.
like this thing where he and Katie Griggs get in front of everybody and bring Ripken out and just
Yeah.
say, look, new sheriff's in town, new thing, ask anything you want, come buy tickets. We're going to do things differently. We're going to be a community organization. I don't feel any of that. It feels very like they're trying to pretend none of this happened. That's
Right.
what the 10,000 empty seats were about. That's what I wanted to impress upon Mr. Rubenstein when I only had 2 minutes of his time.
Yeah.
The error I made, and I'll admit this to you because I reread my letter to him, is I
Hmm.
never said to him, Mr. Rubenstein, did you get my letter?
Uh,
I never said to him, I wrote you a letter because I didn't write it to be a dick or be smug. I
yeah.
wrote it for him to read it. It's my
Hmm.
real feelings. It's not Hunter S. Thompson. It is my experience in walking with the Angelos family and trying to help them. I'm not
Yeah.
the only one. Mike Flanagan died trying to help them,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
Like, so I am not the enemy. I am just a guy with some questions and maybe a flashlight to hold back on you and
Right.
say, you said you were going to do X. Have you done this or not? This is
Hmm.
basic blocking and tackling 101 community business involvement to say we have this brand that we think's great with a great logo and some
Right.
good young kids, but we're trying to get top dollar out of people. We're trying to get the most valuable thing you have in life beyond oxygen and water, which is your time.
Yeah.
They're trying to get you interested in them. And that's the hardest
Yeah.
part of getting the girl is to get her interested in you, right? And I'm
Yeah.
already interested and I have a wallet that I'm holding out and my barrier and my bar to entrance is they won't take it from me.
Right.
They won't take a phone call from me. It's
Yeah.
absurd. I mean, it's
Yeah.
childish, it's bizarre, it's all of that.
Yeah.
And I am just this guy, but saying for my wallet, you must I don't know. Remember when Papa Joe Chevalier had a Bill of Rights, a fan Bill of Rights? I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out how they get those 10,000 seats filled and what they
Hmm.
need to do. And they need to raise their bar for their own level of expectation for
Yeah.
what they're promising the community and delivering for the community. And
Right.
and I guess if you make no promises, you can't break them.
We just haven't heard anything. I mean, yeah, they just made a couple of trades or well, not acquisitions. I know O'Neill and
It
Sanchez.
sounds like a lot of money, but it's not. It's just it's a
Right.
240 outfielder,
My question for
you know.
you is though, I don't hear much from Cal. I mean, does he have any input into what Rubenstein
I
thinks or
have John
says?
Maroon on next week. I'll ask him about Cal a little bit. I don't. I'd like to ask Cal about Cal, and Cal's can come on. I mean,
Yeah.
I really don't know, and I'm so excommunicated.
Yeah.
I mean,
I,
I've had charities ban me because Chad's like it's crazy, right?
yeah.
But I don't know what to say after doing this for 40 years. And Cal can speak for himself. Cal's got
Right.
social media. Cal, has his image thing and whatever. But
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm promising you, as a citizen, as a business owner, as a media leader, as a voice every day, as a guy that they can continue to pretend nobody listens to me, even though every
Right.
metric will show tens of thousands of people that listen every day and
Right.
interact with me from Florida. And like, my heart's good. Everybody's heart's good here, but it needs
Yeah.
to be run differently.
Right.
And it needs to be attacked, not run from. The history of this and the problems of the last 30 years need to be
Right.
addressed. They don't need to be attributed. Nobody needs to say Angelos was blank. I
Right.
mean, whatever he was is doesn't matter. But those
Right.
10,000 empty seats, that's about Peter. And then that that to me, that's about 30 years of
Yeah.
allowing that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically saying what I'm thinking. I mean, I don't, again, I'm detached, but I follow it. I don't
Do you
feel
give
like
them
it.
money? Do you buy the package and watch them 130 nights a year? No.
No, man, no. But, I don't feel like much has changed other
Dude, you
than
got Orioles ish all over your wall.
I
You're like
go
my
to
buddy
see
in
them when they're
Arkansas.
down.
What are you willing to pay, Joel? What I'm not being a jerk. I'm Katie Griggs calling you right now with a survey and saying you're in Florida, you
Right,
love our baseball team, how much for the MLB thing where you get your Rays games, you get all the
right,
things, but you get the Orioles. You can listen to the app. You can get Kevin Brown on satellite. We take it
right.
with you to the beach, wherever you're on a plane, wherever you want to go. What's is it $300 a year too much?
I
five
was
hundred
just going
dollars
to
a year
say
too
it
much?
depends. If it's a couple $100, yeah, I would do it. But you got to watch your budget. But yeah, I mean, but they're not reaching out to me, and it doesn't sound like they're reaching out to
Where
many
are they
people up
getting their
there.
money from if the people who actually love it aren't watching it? Or if they're putting games on Apple TV and making me on a Friday night
That
say,
I hate
I'm
that.
just not going to watch it. Or and
Yeah,
I go over to a
or you
bar
can't.
and maybe
Yeah,
at Cooper's North they'll be able to figure out how to get it on. I
yeah,
mean, like what are and then they don't answer questions from people like me and don't have an answer, and they don't only just fear me, they devalue me and demean me and allow my Caucasian employee access that they denied me last year in Texas as a
yeah,
reporter and expect me to give them a credit card or like say things have changed. I've been dying to say things have changed.
yeah,
When they change, I'll be the first one to know because I'll give them my credit card because I want to. I
yeah,
want to. I want in the Birdland thing. I want it, but
yeah,
nothing comes without a press credential for me. Like there, and that's as simple as that. I own a radio station. I'm a real media member. I've been
yeah,
mistreated for a long, long time. When that changes, they'll get my credit card. And it's not
yeah.
even about me. It's about what's going to get those 10,000 people there.
Right.
What's going to make that what's going to activate those people to love the team, live and die with the team, watch the team,
Right.
invest in the team, take the team with them in lacrosse season even.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, even lacrosse is growing where you are, right?
Oh yeah, it's a accredited high school sport now. Yeah. But I mean, to your point, uh, it's almost like they're just waiting for the fans to come back as the team wins. And the team is winning. Attendance was a little bit better this year. But like I said, I think the way the season ended on such a sour note, they need to do some serious reevaluating, in terms of promoting and all, because if they get out of the blocks a little bit slow next year, they're going to see some decline in attendance because people are fickle, you know that,
I
and
do know
you have to
that.
give them a reason to show up. And
I deal
yeah,
with it with concerts. When bands come around and it's not as good as it used to be and it's too much money, I just don't
yeah,
go. They get
yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
It's like an airline seat. It either gets used or it doesn't get used. And Joel, I hope you sell a lot of books, dude. I love you. You get me ranting because you pinch at me and you do that on purpose.
I
You're like a
know.
caller that calls and ribs me. Joel Poiley wrote a
Yeah,
book called Last Man Standing about the late great Tom
great.
Maddie. I'm not going to tell the story about when Maddie came up to me in the lobby because it'll make
Yeah,
me cry.
yeah,
But the book is available. It has a great cover. Hey, happy holidays to you, my friend,
yeah,
and take
man. The
care of
book's
yourself
on,
down there. One day we're gonna have a beer and a ball game together.
definitely. The book's available on Amazon. I'm also maybe going to send you a link to it. If people want to buy it. Um, yeah, if you like, even if you're not a Colt fan per se, or you don't remember that era, if you love NFL history, there's a lot of that in there too. And yeah, the next time I'm in Baltimore or you're down here, man, look me up for
All right,
sure.
man. You and me will be over at Yoder's eating fried chicken before a spring training game if Katie
Yeah,
Griggs
I love
provides me with my
yours.
proper working credentials. Because Luke and I mean, there's no better place to be in Sarasota in March. I'm in. I'm all in. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive and media access with media guys.